So I wanted to catch you up before I head out for another journey tomorrow, flying out of town. And I just wanted to share because there's been so much happening. So just wanted to provide an update and a quick snapshot of what I'm going to cover in this video. So the last ayahuasca journey I went to was the most incredible to date, with the most gifted shaman I've ever met. She's absolutely amazing. Embodiment of divine feminine, in my opinion. And what I learned in that journey, both trauma from my childhood and glimpses of where I'm headed in the future. We kicked off the program, the second cohort for the company, and we are witnessing massive shifts that happen right from the first sessions for most people and within ourselves and the messages that we've been receiving through that trajectory. And then it reached the brink of fracture, even more significant break in multiple relationships through the whole process. Discovering more sovereignty, more inner strength, more gifts emerging, just more humility and awe, ultimately, is what I've come to. And then I'm going to end with a movie we saw tonight. Just the messages that came through, the timing of it. Absolutely stunning. All right, so let me get started. The journey that I went to, and that was the ayahuasca journey, was really incredible. So it was a woman that I'd met for the first time who was leading it, the shaman, and just her ability to have real presence, a very loving presence, almost like a maternal figure. So she could really push people and get them to step into their own strength and power. But she did it with kind of a commanding presence, but totally lovingly. There was a firmness there, but with complete love. And then her voice just took me into deeper and deeper realms. And the scariest thing that I discovered, when I realized it has happened to me in every ayahuasca journey, and for some reason I just assumed it's happening to everyone, it's standard as part of medicine. But I only realized when I was sharing with folks afterwards that this was unique to my own. And what I discovered was, toward the beginning of the journey, I was heading to the bathroom. And the bathroom was full, and I started going upstairs. And I felt this terror when I was heading upstairs, like in the darkness, almost like I'm heading into the den of something really scary. And I realized every time I would go to the bathroom, I would feel what I then described as not surrender, but submission. It was like my body was being submitted to something I didn't want. Going to the bathroom, and then I felt like I was like going unconscious. I would like try to keep myself focused and come back and quickly go back to the room when I'd be fine. And I realized this was happening in Peru as well. And what I realized then afterwards when I was sharing with folks was that it became resonant, the memory of, I believe, what was happening in my childhood when I was experiencing the sexual trauma as they were drugging me. So the bathrooms were outside, and we would go to the bathroom at night sometime. And then my uncle and his friend would often be drinking in the veranda in this really old home in India. And I think what they did then was drug us and then maybe take us somewhere, bring us back. What came up even more recently was experiences both with taxes that are coming up that I was filing for the company and with finances that I'm taking more ownership of so that I can have more autonomy. In both cases, I started getting this really deep sadness I started feeling in the interactions. And what I was starting to trigger within me was betrayal by someone who's close to me and knowing at a subconscious level that something just doesn't feel right, but I can't put my finger on it. Now, there was nothing happening to anyone here, but it was just a trigger of this childhood memory. I went into deep sadness, just sobbing when I realized it, both the fact that I was drugged and the fact that there was a betrayal by someone that I trusted, that I must have trusted as a kid. And it took me to a really dark place of deep contraction. And so I experienced this in the journey, and I realized that afterwards, when I was reflecting on it, that I've always gone to the bathroom as an emergency. In fact, I was constipated most of my adulthood, so I'd only go to the bathroom once a week. So I would never even have to go in there. And usually it's like I go 30 seconds in and out kind of thing. And I realized I was avoiding because of the re-trigger of the memory. So heading to the journey this weekend, and this time as I start losing what feels like losing consciousness, I'm going to see if I can surrender to it and see if that can allow me to move through whatever else it is that I experience. One of the things I discovered in Vipassana was the scenes of the sexual trauma that I experienced, and I shared in the last video. But I realized that there are scenes of movies that would be really disturbing to me. I just couldn't get out of my mind for weeks. And I realized that when I went back, what other scenes of movies really made me feel like that? They're really particular. There's only like a handful of them. So I realized I think that might be memories of traumas I've experienced. And so I think there's more for me to uncover and the traumas of my childhood and things that I designed to move through, and then have the capacity now to heal, and then have visceral experience of both the trauma and the healing process so that maybe I can offer that to others. So there's a part of me that's really dreading this journey that's coming up this weekend, because I still have bouts and waves of sadness as I go deeper into these traumas. Even now, as I tune into it, I can feel this lightheadedness and this fear. What's going to emerge? I'm just trying to hold space for myself in that effort. But the rest of the journey then was pure light, love and light. And what was happening was, as soon as she started to play music, any instruments, I would feel all these vibrations moving through the body. Like I could feel divine feminine power activating in my system. My heart was just wide open, tons of compassion. I could just feel completely connected. It was like the veils were lifted, and I was experiencing all the realms, connection to all of creation. Absolutely stunning. And then it would collapse into oneness, into this very moment, present moment. And I would be in so much awe, increasing stillness. My hand would move into like more and more still, more and more still. It was almost like felt like I was touching source energy. It was so powerful. I couldn't even breathe. It was so still, almost holding my breath in sheer utter awe. And then it would come back into my body, and my knees would start to buckle from the sheer humility that I was feeling, the amount of love that I was experiencing. And then what they started showing me was how to move between the magnificent and wild movement, where a couple were saying it looked like I had multiple arms, like a goddess or something. But I feel all this incredible movement, even like I had wings at one point, like an angel. And then I would come into this deep stillness. And they started showing me how to move between them, how to move from movement and noise and chatter and cacophony, like what's happening in the world today, to stillness. And how do you transition between those? How do you move into the eye of the storm? How do you bring enlightenment into the day-to-day? And they showed me how I was going to be showing others how to do that at some point. And then what they were showing me on the third day was they started doing ceremonial like movements. And one of the movements, I think I shared before, it was repeating itself. It was a namaste, honoring divine beings, my higher self, and others. And then it was compassion, and I would feel all this compassion. I would be in tears, and I even felt like one point I was taken into Jesus at the moment of his death, where he was full of compassion in that moment, streaming tears. I experienced the deepest sadness I've ever felt, and also pure love and laughter. And one point I had to leave the room because I was erupting with so much joy and laughter that I was worried I was going to disrupt the room. So I ended up going outside when all the veils lifted, and I was experiencing all of reality, all of creation, and the connection to it. It was absolutely exquisite. And afterwards, one person next to me said, "Are you a priestess or a healer?" Like, I don't know. We'll have to see what emerges. But they were doing a lot of ceremonial rites with my hand and showing me it. And immediately I knew I wanted to work with this woman. I'm actually heading to a journey with her tomorrow. So I'm really humbled and excited to see what emerges through these next journeys. Okay, so since then, the other big thing that's been happening is the program. So we kicked off the second cohort. We've had such an amazing diversity of individuals that have been drawn to the program. Most of the people whom I've met over journeys over the last couple of months, but they're, artists and filmmakers and incubators and VCs and coaches and shamans and all kinds of interesting characters. Every session has been wildly different. And we've been seeing massive shit happening right from the first session. So we even realized it was this time, instead of being 10 weeks, we did 4 individual sessions, 2 group sessions, which are coming up. And we've done most of the individual sessions, but that I feel like we can compress even further because our capacity kept growing. Every person we were reading, they were messages for us, things that we're moving through, and releases that we were experiencing as we were helping them clear. So it was lined up with the Chinese New Year. moving from the year of the snake to the year of the fire horse. And one of our clients had told us how the 7 days after the 17th of February, it was still transitioning from the snake. And then after the 7 days began the fire horse. So that's the transition period. And we were seeing darker and darker, deeper and deeper traumas emerging both in our clients and in ourselves. I got to the 7th day of it. I was literally on the verge of divorce. I'd realized when we went on a trip to Big Sur how starkly contrasted our views were, my husband and I. And at one point he'd said, I don't see the problem with hanging on to anger, and subconscious can't be reprogrammed. And I thought, whoa, we couldn't be more apart in our views, like worlds apart. And I started realizing I live in fear, even in the home. I find myself hiding in a corner doing the energy work, working with clients. Every time you come in the room, I start feeling nervous or fear about doing this work. And so I think from past trauma and past lives, there's all this fear. I felt like the only way for both of us to grow was for me to leave. So I came to this with all this conviction. I'm on this incredible epic journey. I'm being shown so many gifts, and I want to lean all the way into this. And then on the 7th day of this transition after the Chinese New Year, I was having this conversation with my husband, a really candid, open conversation. Realized I don't have to burn the house down. I can actually share what it is that I need and have a conversation about that. So do I need more space? Should I get a separate space that I can go to? Can I have funds that are just mine so that I don't have to worry about anyone looking over my shoulder? And the thing that we crystallized on is, over the next 6 months to a year, my belief is that one of us will shift. Either I will realize that all the things I've been led to have been assuming and believing, primarily that the collective could go into deeper and deeper darkness. And people are going to experience massive amounts of mental and physical pain, excruciating pain, where they start moving to alternative healing methods because they don't find solace in Western methods. And the second thing is the demand for the kind of stuff that we're doing will go through the roof. So my understanding and my prediction is that over the course of this year, we will see both of those things happen. If that doesn't happen, I'll be the first to admit, maybe I was hallucinating the whole thing. Or he will also be taken to the precipice, the edge, as the frequency rises, his own darkness coming to the surface, and seeing it in the collective. Just like my worldview shifted, his worldview will shift. So what we realize is if we can figure out how to navigate what we need over the next 6 to 12 months and see what happens, we can determine next steps. And so we were able to come to this really mature place where I felt for the first time able to not only vocalize what I needed, but not feel ashamed or guilty or nervous about sharing it. It was just new for me, really new for me, given my conditioning. That's been really powerful. But I realized it also really disruptive. Also been true in the business partnership, where starting to realize in all of my relationships, I hold back even in the smallest of ways. And I realized I need a channel actually have complete autonomy to be creative and to make decisions on my own and not default to my pattern of deferral to others that I work with and for. And so that was this thread that seems to be emerging, but in parallel, I'm starting to show more strength and confidence in sharing with everyone what it is that I need, even if it's disruptive, and then moving through and processing what it is that's disruptive to either of us. One of the things that a friend of mine, a therapist, shared was health outcomes, positive experiences, hope. And it was basically for the ACE study. So the ACE is acute childhood experience, a study that Kaiser did with 17,000 people. And they found a direct correlation between acute childhood events, which are things like separation, emotional abuse, household dysfunction. There's 10 of them. And they found there was a direct correlation between your ACE number and health outcomes. 63% of U.S. adults reported at least one, 16% reported 4 or more. With individuals 4+, they're significantly more likely to suffer from chronic illness, asthma, cancer, heart disease, mental health issues like depression. And then high ACE scores are linked to smoking, alcoholism, high-risk HIV behavior. And then the economic impact of ACE is estimated at $1.5 trillion in lost productivity and healthcare spending. And then they said that children with 3 or more ACEs are 5 times more likely to have attendance issues, 6 times more likely to have behavior problems, 3 times more likely to experience academic failure. So there's pretty direct outcomes between what is trauma, basically. They found that there are 4 pillars: supportive relationships, safe environments, opportunities for emotional growth, and social engagement that promote sense of belonging, were ways that people can actually overcome, despite having these traumas in their childhood, can heal. So it's not just inevitable. And that's what we're doing. We're basically getting to the healing trauma, the energetic level, but we're also looking at the emotional, mental, and physical layers, but starting at the root with energy to see if we can start to capture sort of outcomes. I realized it's part of the reason I was able to move through this childhood trauma without such adverse impact was that I started spinning positive stories, positive narratives, seeing the silver lining. And I started finding a way to overcome what would otherwise so they just a negative, challenging experience that would tear me down or break me down. And now that I've grown up and I've developed this capacity, now it's me to search so I can fully heal it and also thereby remove any mental and physical health impact from these traumas that I experienced in my childhood. One thing I wanted to share was utilization of my sexual trauma as an example of how I tuned into the parts and was able to start healing some of it. I remembered at one point after I discovered in this ayahuasca journey that I was drugged, and it brought up a lot of sadness and a lot of fear. And I came to a point where I just felt what I must have felt when I was a little girl, in that stark loneliness, because I couldn't tell anyone. They threatened me with my life and with impacting people that I love. I didn't feel like I could tell anyone. So I think I tuned into that level of stark loneliness, and it was like an ocean of tears. And then another part of me I noticed when I was suddenly into the feeling, allowing the tears to flow, this other part of me, which maybe a protective part, was like, I'm so proud of you for having the narrative and the silver lining in the story. And then I felt another part that was rage and anger. Like, no one will ever hurt you like that again. Fiercely protective over my dead body. That kind of strength was another part. And then I was just honoring each of these parts. And then I came back to that little girl. I was speaking with her that she's not alone anymore. She's safe. She's loved. That she's enough. And there was tears streaming. I was releasing the pain of the exile part. And then there was music that happened to be playing in the car at the time. And I suddenly saw myself, my adult self, dancing with this little girl and embracing her, just holding her. And I can feel it now, just so much beauty, so much love. And then I just came to this place of peace, where I could honor her and release some of her pain and some of the protective parts that were there to prevent me from feeling those. So feeling gratitude for those parts, because they weren't there, I would have probably completely crumbled as a child after experiencing so much trauma. So I just wanted to share that piece, and that I wanted to share some of the messages that we've received through programs, through the individuals that are coming to us. And what I really believe now is that the cohort and the individuals that came to us and the experiences they went through was a vehicle to convey these messages to us and to help us clear more trauma in the system so that we continue to increase our frequency and step into this journey that we're on. And so we were shown, for example, and we would see it happening in a couple of sessions, like parallel. So one of the things that I saw, for example, was some people who had someone pass away, someone that they loved pass away. What I was shown when those individuals came into the session was that there was a bridge. It was like a thread, often through one of the chakras, it was a thread between the worlds, between the physical and the spiritual world, between the person who passed away in the spiritual world and the person here on earth. Because of the connection they formed in life, when they passed away, that connection continued, and it was almost pre-designed so that they would establish this bridge. And there are individuals that are doing that across the planet with people who passed away as a way to help the ascension process of the planet and humanity. And it was fascinating. It's like they're going to work in conjunction, in parallel, where these people who passed away are going to be guides to the people that are still living. help them move through this journey of helping humanity. I think all of the people that were in the cohort just seemed incredible. They were all builders of the new world. Powerhouse of energy. When you bring them all together, I can't wait to see that. I'm getting chills just thinking about it because the sheer level of purpose, potential, power, presence, love, capacity, unlike anything I've seen. We were showing a couple of journeys, the dawn of a new world, right? The 7-day transition. The day after that, the experiences were so much love and light. We stepped into these nirvanic like state peace that I've never experienced. We continued meditating for hours after these journeys, and I experienced body dissolution and only a beating heart was overflowing with love, complete connection to the heavens. And that was one of the things that came up was like connecting to the heavens and the earth, and then sacred heart and breathing through the sacred heart, which is right here, the sternum between the fourth or the fifth and the fourth chakra. In the middle is the 4.5, the sacred heart. You rhythmically breathe, invite the higher self in. That's the infinity gateway point. Source intelligence and love comes through that the higher self enters through that point. So we were finding, and people were having crazy experiences. A couple of people were experiencing like under the rib with pain. When we looked it up, that was a Jesus wound stepping here, and it's a sign of the sacred heart opening. And then experiencing pure love and light, tons of it coming in. People moving into these incredibly blissful states. And then some of them, after that, were having like migraines and headaches and sweating through the night, and all these symptoms we started seeing in a bunch of folks. When all that light came in, loosened lots of trauma and blocks were then releasing from the system. And so then we were suggesting to people, and if you start experiencing what are known as Ascension symptoms, the Hertzheimer reaction, when there's a rapid detox, like we're moving a lot of energy, right? We're clearing it. The body can have an immune response. So anything from headaches to fatigue to full flu-like symptoms, and we were experiencing this too. Sinuses, and it looks feels like allergies, convulsions, shaking. People were having sensations in different parts of the body. And these are all totally normal. What we did was a few people, when it was too much, would just get on a call and help accelerate them leaving the body, and that would help bring them back to normal. But hydration, rest, honoring what's arising, not taking rest because that's a low vibration that then traps the energy back in the system. Basically, it's trying to leave the system. So within usually a couple of days at most, the system. And then the last thing I'm going to share that has been fascinating is that tonight, one of the things that came up in one of the journeys with one of the folks, and this is a person that builds immersive experiences and art installations, brings in all these neuroscientific principles until it's being built. And one of these we see was these cosmic beings that were coming into the session were showing us how we would basically be building immersive experiences where it would accelerate the ascension process and the clearing of energy. Then it would be a bridge or a portal to other dimensions to bring in light codes and frequencies from other planes or other dimensions. So I haven't seen it in like a decade. The movie Contact. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Jodie Foster, Matthew McConaughey. It was from 1997, an ancient movie. But I was shown glimpses from that about high frequency and architectural drawings to build these structures that allow people to ascend more rapidly. And so then tonight, my husband and I wanted to watch a movie. Why don't we watch this movie, Contact? It just came into my mind. That was recommended. Hadn't seen it in a really long time. And I was blown away. Turns out, I didn't learn this until before we watched the movie. Based on a book by Carl Sagan, who's an American scientist and astronomer and author, Pulitzer Prize winner, Emmy Award winner, National Science Awards. It's the only book of fiction he wrote, published. And the movie that was based on it. Themes include science versus space. And it's a scientist that is given architectural drawings. She decodes to then discover how to build a structure that takes her through a wormhole to other dimension. And then she doesn't have proof. And so it's all about having these experiences. And it was so present for me. And my husband and I had these conversations sometimes. Like Occam's razor, his argument of, do you really think this whole elaborate thing of people from other dimensions and guides and multiple lives and all that, or maybe we just die and rot and it was just delusion because you want to believe that there's more to life than what actually exists. We've had these debates and discussions, and one of the things she said, which I wanted to share, was when they're questioning her at the end about what's your proof, the experience you have. And she said, I had an experience. I can't prove it. I can't even explain it. Everything that I know as a human being, everything that I am tells me that it was real. I was given something wonderful, something that changed me forever. A vision of the universe that tells us undeniably how tiny and insignificant and how rare and precious we all are. A vision that tells us that we belong to something greater than ourselves, that none of us are alone. I wish I could share that. I wish that everyone, if only for one moment, could feel that awe and humility and hope. And that continues to be my wish. That's exactly how I feel. So it was going from this deep contraction that I've been in, seeing this movie, and to complete and utter awe, wonder, and joy. Synchronicity. What I wanted to share.